So the reason I find Otto's interview moving is because there's a couple things. I grew up redneck, and was taught to give the shirt off your back, and then you see a man try to go help somebody, and the powers that be just kick him in his mouth, and then they don't stop. They don't stop. The man tries to go down, to go to court, to get things done, and he's charged with felony child abuse, or felony endangerment of his child, because the cops, I have kids, and it hurts to see my best friend hurting like that, and there's not a fucking thing you can do to help. Same thing with Eric, right? You get into these situations, I knew when I started watching, because of my background, I knew when I started watching, there was a few things that I would see, right? I knew I'd see somebody die. I knew I'd see somebody get the fuck beat out of them. And I knew I would see, very rarely, something that I'd be proud to see. Then you get into, knowing these people and trying to help, and, just all I wanted to do was be a computer guy. Y'all are having technical issues? Hey, I can come help you fuck that up. Even worse than you're doing it now, so let's see what we can do. And then you get attached. You can't just come in and work on computers, because they have to tell their story, right? And it's not like you can tune it out. You can't play the music loud enough. You can't play the video games long enough. You can't watch enough intentional searched for good video. So when I first saw Eric, I just thought he was a raving lunatic, right? I really did. This is some asshole that has literally been pushed far beyond, and he is expressing himself in the only way possible, right? By saying fuck cops, by being flamboyant, by, using his, all of his techniques that he's learned. And then I got to meet him. And we talked about submarines. We talked about nerd shit. And I use that nerd shit because it's computerized. It's stuff that most people don't talk about. Or, how a 3D printer works, or how a laser cutter system works. And be able to talk about how the beam bounces, and understand that you have, there's a lot of technicalities to it, just like producing a show. There's a lot of technicalities to it. And when you get to have that conversation with people, right, you make a connection. Whether it's a good, bad, or indifferent, there's a connection because of the because of the information that is exchanged back and forth. So when I find these people, right, and when I talk to them, you become attached.
Tell me something. So, to the scene, when did you first meet him? How did you first connect with him?
Oh, I first met him because of Janet's Kitchen. I come down there, and then, Eric wasn't out there because he had gotten trespassed or whatever they did to his ass to tell him that he's not allowed to be there. And so I come down to help Miss Janet. And the first thing I asked Miss Janet was, I'm here to help do dishes, because nobody ever wants to do the dishes, right? It's the cleanup work. It's that stuff. And that was the only way that I knew I wouldn't be instantly rejected. I knew that there was no reason for them to trust me at all, right? Especially with all the bullshit going on in their life, right? But I wanted to come help, right? And then have you ever seen any of Eric's videos where he's no tripod, nothing? And then he's trying to do like StreamYards and all this other, all these other technologies, and he needed a background. And I had a green screen, and I had a green screen and had some lights, and it was like, you know what? He'll get more use out of it than I will. It'll help his show be better, right? Because I never really intended to be like this. I intended to be behind the scenes, help out here and there. And the path took me a different way. And we're here sitting today.
And what was that path?
So the path that I ended up on was documentation of the downfall of our society. You know? I'm not going to participate in it. Either way, I'm not going to participate on either side except to say I don't think it's right. I don't think this is something that people should be doing to each other. And with the upbringing that I had, weren't we raised better than this? You know? I mean,
where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I grew up in a little small East Texas town. It's a spot on the map.
And what did you learn there?
I learned what dirt road poor meant, right? And what that means is that there are people that hunt in the country to put food on the table, right? And they go out and hunt every day to put that food on the table. You know, they worry about the gas that's in their truck. They worry about the gas that's in their little lawnmower, because that might be the 5 gallons or the gallon that they need to get to the store, right? And I learned that, you know, no matter how much money you have, you really can't buy happiness, and you can't take it with you, right? So what the fuck are you doing with it while you're here? It's like your life, right? Are you going to try to, you know, at least get some people to talk together, or, you know, are you just going to sit back and just live your life, right? Are you going to be all up in somebody's business because you think they are living it wrong, right? You know, and then instead of coming up and going, hey, buddy, I got a better idea of how you should live your life. No, they'll come up, you're fucking up, right? In the country, you just come up and go, hey, brother, is there something I can do to help you? Yeah. I mean, like Otto said, you get into these situations where people will talk about large-scale issues, right? And they'll talk about it for, I don't know, till the news media turns it off, right? And then it's just forgotten because it's not part of your life, right? And one of the weirdest things was I felt sorry, I felt hurt. I felt these emotions that, dude, these are assholes on the internet. Why the fuck should I care?
Why do you care?
Because they're human beings. If you cut any one of them, or you cut me, we all bleed red.
But they're doing these crazy things on the internet. What you sound like you were skeptical at first. What changed? What changed?
Well, the part that changed to me was I talked to them. I actually learned who they were, right? I gave it the opportunity just to find out that they were assholes, right? But they weren't.
But that's a great question. Why did you even take the time?
Because it seemed like nobody else was, right? You got all these people that are just trying the best they can to just record the fucking video and have no understanding of what is behind it, right? And in the computer world, you get charged for everything. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to give my knowledge away for free. It's like cash to me. I don't get to leave with it. And who the hell am I to keep it all? Right? I want to share it. And I think if we actually as a species would share more, we probably wouldn't have some of the issues that we have.
So you
right.
Really bad analogy.
No, but that's a great dude, that's a great analogy, and that's one of the things about working with people, right? You find something that we can talk about on the same level, and then you expand into what this person doesn't know. Right? So, you know, if you want to talk about trucks, let's talk about trucks. I can tell you how a computer works like a truck, right? Here's where your gas is stored. Here's where your, gas tank's your hard drive, the engine is your CPU, right? The windshield's your graphics card, right? And you see through it, and it doesn't matter. You can associate those things, right? When I started associating feelings with these people, it hurt, right? You watch a man that goes out and goes, attention police, even though it was on a bullhorn, who cares, right? All cops are poop, and then get shot in the gut with a 40 millimeter or whatever those fucking rounds are. That you look on the news right now in this time, and you will see people taking pictures of these ballistics that were fired at them. And I watched that man take one in the gut, and I think I'd have crumpled. That old boy just turned around, and I'm just like, oh my God, dude, I know that had to hurt. And when you see this done over and over and over. You know, you never expect to see it in your backyard, right? NIMBY, George Carlin, not in my backyard. You know, and that's another interesting, you know, he took it as a comedic route. I can see Eric as not only a comedian, but I can see him, I've seen that man cry for Otto. And when I met him, everybody told me he didn't like to get touched. And I come up to him and I said, can I give you a hug? You know, because I feel that same pain, right?
What pain is it?
It's a gut-wrenching pain. You know, it rips your heart out because you want the best for, or at least I do. I want to see the best in everybody, you know, and not everybody can have the best. But I think we could have better than what we're doing, right? And that's why I want to show up and just give some nerd support, right? You just want to help. And you want to help in such a way that doesn't interfere, doesn't get your ass in trouble, right? I mean, that's, you know, I don't want to play the games, right? You know, but I damn sure wanted to make sure the voice was heard, right? I've spoken to people and I've told them, your voice is too powerful to be silenced. If you ever need a place, you let me know, right? I'll make sure we got a place. And we started True 2. So there's an asshole sitting off camera, guys, but he come on one day. Otto is sitting in the hoot scow or whatever, and he comes on and he says, "I'll match dollar for dollar to help bail this man out." Well, I took it as let's bankrupt this motherfucker and show him what the internet's about. Right? You want to come out here and we want to match dollar for dollar, son? We're fixing to teach you a lesson. And it didn't work out that way. We raised our money. He put his in there. And that man got out of jail. Otto got out of jail. And after that, me and Chris Powers started talking. And I showed him, I was like, hey, you know, I'm watching YouTube getting a little bit sensitive about things. You know, you get stuff like Kenosha going off and, you know, it becomes one of these issues, right, where we have a corporate feelings police, right? We have a group of people that have decided that since you're on their platform, which is private, right? It's a private platform. We get to determine what you say or do, right? And if it's good for our advertisers, we'll go forward. I don't like that idea, right? That, you know, there has to be some type of censorship. I understand that, right? Or we would truly lose our effing minds, right?
But let me ask you a question, because you understand this. This algorithm, for example, on YouTube is sort of focused around fear.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So, what are the two best things that sell in ever? Sex and fear. Okay? You can get money for either one of them. You can go do pornos. Or you can go install security cameras. Right? Or you can work on computers that do security cameras. Right? And you can talk to people and you go, well, you know, you're worried about your employees, and we can at least make sure we got the mugshot if they get killed. You know, and that's horrible. It's horrible. But it sells. And still sells today. So, you know, you look at these things and I look at the way that the advertisement's done for the police force. From the 80s, we had all these movies that glorified these ass whippings. Glorified them. Then we got the cop shows. Glorified. That motherfucker deserved it because, yeah, the cop said so, right? And then reality hit. People started picking up their phones. Thank you, Tom. I'm late to the game comparatively speaking. But at the same time, it was my time to show up, right?
What was your first reaction? Talk about your first time you watched Eric Brandt video. Talk about, like, you were just sitting there. How'd you come across it? What was it like?
So, just like a lot of people, I found people over in California, and I was like, okay, let's find somebody here local, right? And like I said, I think it was, I don't even remember which video it was. That's the kind of impression that it made to me. You know, it was just like, fuck this guy, right? You know, you don't want, yelling at somebody is going to only get you so far, right? And if you bring honey to a situation, you're going to collect more flies than you will with vinegar, right? And what that means is that I didn't think that it was actually going to solve anything, right? I thought that, you know, I'm going to watch this poor guy get his ass whipped on TV, right? You know, he's going to say something, this cop's going to flip the fuck out and whip his ass. Never happened, you know. They just handcuff him, whatever. And you, like I said, you just don't, I don't understand how pain compliance is a thing, right? If you don't understand what pain compliance is, that's torture to make you do what you want.
But let me ask you a question because it's really fascinating. So you watch his video, but how do you get from like watching his video saying, this guy is just trying to cause trouble, to being a friend and a supporter and going out, searching him out? What was where did that go from?
Well, when you watch this asshole do a video.
Which asshole?
Oh, sorry, the Eric. When you watch Eric do a video, right, and he's down in a little room, and there's all this clutter behind him, right? You know, like we worked hard to get this scene, right? You want to make sure the scene's right. And I was just like, you know, why don't we just put a green screen up and you throw whatever the fuck you want on it?
So it was a technical thing?
Yeah, it was completely technical. It was nothing to do with, you know, his message or anything. It was, I just saw that he needed technical help.
But there are a lot of people who do. Why him?
Why not? He was close. I mean, not only that, but I mean, I was watching his channel grow, right? And I would see people asking him, you know, when are you going to get a little better or anything like that? You know, and it's like, you know, fuck it. You know, if this actually makes a difference, great. I got to help a butterfly bloom, but.
So when did you go from like tech support to actually caring about the issues? Or I know you already cared about them, but thinking that he was someone that you felt more deeply tied to than just, you know, being, I'm going to help you.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, the first day that I met him, right? Because it wasn't the flamboyant shit you see on the internet, right? It wasn't the degenerate that the mainstream media would actually project him as. And I found it intriguing because it could be me, right? The man is very intelligent, right? And, you know, it could have been me out there, right? Having all the knowledge that I have. And still, because some asshole wanted to lie, some other human that happened to apply for a job, happened to pass the background check, happened to do all this other stuff, was no better than the common thief.
Are you, how do you feel about Monday? I mean, you seem like you become close to him. How do you feel about it?
I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to watch my friend get fucking sentenced to some stupid shit. You know? You know, at what point does the talking no longer work, right? At what point do we stop what we're doing and actually make good change, right?
Are you worried about him going to prison?
Yeah, of course. Of course. You know, that's what, you know, I don't want to watch somebody take my friend away, right? Just like you wouldn't want to watch your mother get taken away. Just like you wouldn't want to watch your brother getting taken away. Just because we didn't share the same mother and father doesn't mean we're not brothers. You know, it's what you would do for the dude down the street, right? Or your neighbor that you have great relationships with. You know, you don't want to see them get run over. You don't want to see them hurt. You don't want to see any negatives to them.
You talk a lot about empathy, and the internet does not seem to be a very empathetic place.
No, the internet is not an empathetic place. The internet is the cesspool of the trolls, you know, because when it started, they couldn't track you. So you could literally say whatever the fuck you wanted and dare them to track you down. I'd give the shirt off my back for him. I'd make sure he wouldn't have to sleep outside. you know, I'd give him the last money in my pocket. I'd give him the shoes off my feet. You know, but I'd do that for anybody, right? Because I want to show that we don't have this empathy anymore. It's not there. There's no care. There's no literal give a fuck. And it pisses me off as a human that we have all of these emotions, and yet we can't show the very basic one that was showed to us when we came into this motherfucking world.
So I think what you're saying, which is really fascinating, that a lot of this stuff you see with the auditors stuff is about this. They're trying to humanize people in a way, like
Yeah.
trying to say we're human beings. Is that what?
Some of it is. Some of it is, you know. And then you'll see other shit where people are just, you know, they show the same thing as the other side does to it, you know. And it's like, okay, well, you know, if you're ever in trouble, I'll still let people know, right? But I'm not going to sit there and watch your content. You know, I'm not going to give that effort to that. Eric showed an empathy for Otto that I've never seen from anybody else, right? And it's a touching one, you know, because Eric gives a shit about Otto.
What did you do for them?
You should ask him about the ranch, the 1983 Dude Ranch. You know, Eric was going to make sure that Otto's kids are taken care of because they destroyed Otto. And at least Eric made sure they had a place that they could go and be safe for a little bit anyway, or away from everybody else.
Do you think some of the people who are doing this, it's about this lack of empathy that you're talking about, like the reason?
God, I hope so. I really do. You know, I watch a lot of Tom Zebra's videos, right? And his seem to be all about empathy for humans, right? He doesn't really care that you're a meth addict or any of that shit. Just don't come around, you know, don't. He cares that they're fucking you up. He cares that they're using shit to, you know, whatever they can to get you in that back of that car, right? And just put another belt, you know. And you watch these things and you see people that, you know, are really just there to show that these are humans that are getting treated worse than, I don't know, worse than the dirt we even walk on.
But what would people say? They're just looking for trouble. What would you say to them?
You know, when you showed up in that costume, I think you were searching out trouble yourself, right? And, you know, I think that one of the interesting things that I've learned over the years is don't feed the troll, okay? Well, people will go, well, you're on their side. No, listen to what I'm saying. If you believe that they're a troll, why are you continuing to talk to them, right? Why are you continuing to engage them? Why are you escalating? If you don't think they're worth your time to talk to, why the fuck are you doing it, right? Because you think your opinion is so much more valid than theirs? Well, be the bigger person. Walk away. So one of the biggest things that people don't understand about Eric is the fact that it took something to make him that way, right? There is a past there. And if you don't take time to actually flip through the book a little bit, so to speak, you're going to miss out on the greatest intellect of our time. And it's your bad for doing it. I think that Eric is one of the brightest men of our time, you know. I mean, you put him in a tin can and then threw him up underneath the ocean and said, hey, if you don't control this, you're going to melt, right? So you got to figure out how these little rods go up and down and how to stop a nuclear reaction, and, you know, you're in charge of it. You know, I mean, you don't let just the average Joe do that, right? You got to test for that kind of thing, and, you know, you got to have a little bit of integrity, right? And that's one of the most interesting things that I've found, you know, is that you want everybody to be completely honest and integral all the time, right? But it's not in our nature, right? Our nature is always, it seems like we've been raised to cover our ass all the time, right? And I think it's a global pandemic of itself that we should just own up, right? Just say, hey, this is fucked up, or, you know, I don't agree with you, but the way we set up our society, I have to be accepting of it. You know, I don't have to agree with it. And I think that, I think that his message and his singing, I hear it all over the United States now, from West Coast to East Coast.
What, be specific, you hear what?
Ole, 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 ole. I get to hear the song that everybody has come accustomed to. And you get different renditions of it. You know, people are kind of like, they'll forget or they just add their own to it. But it starts off with that 4 oles. And it bellows.
What does it mean?
It means that, you guys the police have the monopoly on violence. And the best thing that we can do is just sing to let you know. It's so important that we have storytellers that will come out and listen, regurgitate, and then professionally regurgitate that story. It's so important.
It's important, I think, that we don't work for the mainstream media. That's what's very important. Because I did, and I know how limiting that is. And the one thing that's really nice is that there's no mainstream media outlet that would let us cover this the way we covered it.
No.
They cover Eric like he's some sort of,
Dude, he's a fucking villain. They would cover him as he is the #1 hitman of John Gotti or one of these other mobsters, right? And that what the justice system is doing is justice. And it's a fucking lie. It is a fucking lie. And everybody's like, oh, unchecked. When was the last time that you just hands down believe the fucking internet? Okay? Because let me tell you, if you do, you're a fucking idiot. Okay? Wikipedia. Do research farther than Wikipedia. We have this neat little thing called a library.
How do you feel when you see Eric painted as this arch criminal?
Oh, I hope somebody says something about it. Ask me. Right? You want to know about Eric? Yeah. Right? We were out literally somewhere in Colorado Springs, right? And we were standing on the corner, and this dude was like, they need to go get fucking jobs, this, that, and the other. I think I'm going to go over there and tell them, right? And you look at me, and, I don't fit in as far as the mold, so to speak, that, Eric spoke of, right? And so you look at this, and you listen to him, and you go, hey, I promise you this. You're not going to like the result of what happens if you go over there and try that. Well, I want to know what caused it. I said, if you go over there and ask them that, instead of telling them they're fucking assholes and all this other shit, you'll get somewhere. Go over there and talk to them. Ask them, what made you want to do this? Right? And find that out first. And then if you hear that story and you still think he's an asshole, call him an asshole. Right? Otherwise, don't be an asshole.
What happened?
He went over and talked, came back and got in his car and left. There was no huge...
It almost makes it like you just think we're just not listening to each other, which is so ironic because the internet is nothing but a big loudspeaker, but we're not really listening.
Yeah, but here's the thing is how... so think about a autistic child, right? And the reason I bring it up is because with autism you have different triggers, right? It could be the sun, it could be loud noises, it could be a dog, there's all these different triggers. But you never know until you test them, right? And that's hard. Most people don't want to even go through the hard test, right? They don't want to try to, like on old CB, you got squelch, right? You don't want to try to tune it in, it's those kind of things, right? It's like slapping the TV to get a better picture. No, it's the antenna, you jackass. Slapping the damn thing ain't going to help you. Move the antenna, lick your fingers and touch it, see it changes.
So we need to listen.
I don't know. I don't know that it's listen. Right? You get a lot of people that'll pay you time, that'll give you the, all right, here's my ear, talk. I think it is the fact that we listen for keywords that are relevant in our life, and we forget to take the keywords from the other humans in our life. Creep you out.